The morning light of 3 different suns filtered through the crystal dome of the Galactic Academy. Students from dozens of worlds hurried across the courtyard, their various forms of movement creating a strange but beautiful dance. Some walked on legs, others floated, and a few rolled along on specialized body parts that humans would find impossible to describe. Dr. Talvin checked his presentation notes one final time. His crystal-like fingers moved across the datapad with practiced ease. Today was important. Today, he would share his research about one of the most dangerous behaviors in the known galaxy: the humans and their deadly pets. The amphitheater filled, slowly. Representatives from 47 different species took their seats. Each seat was specially designed for different body types. Some were pools of water for aquatic beings, others were heated rocks for cold-blooded species. The variety was amazing, yet they all had one thing in common. They were all here to learn about the strange human practice of keeping predators as companions. Emma Ross sat in the back row, feeling very much alone. She was the only human in the room, invited only as an observer. The Terran Federation had asked her to attend and report back on what the other species thought about humans. So far, she wasn't impressed with what she was hearing in the pre-session conversations. "I heard they let these creatures sleep in their beds," whispered a spider-like being from the Arachnid Collective. "Impossible," replied a floating jellyfish creature. "No species would willingly share sleeping space with a predator. It must be some form of mind control." Emma wanted to speak up, but her instructions were clear. Observe only. Don't interfere with the academic process. She sighed and settled back in her chair. At her feet, hidden in the shadows beneath her seat, something warm and furry shifted position. Emma's hand dropped down to gently scratch behind an ear that no one else could. "See," Dr. Talvin began his presentation. His voice carried clearly through the amphitheater's sound system, translated instantly into the native languages of all attendees. "Fellow scholars, we gather today to examine one of the galaxy's most puzzling mysteries. The human species has somehow convinced itself that deadly predators make suitable household companions," the audience murmured in fascination and horror. Dr. Talvin continued, warming to his subject. "Our research team has spent 3 years studying this phenomenon. We have analyzed thousands of hours of human behavior recordings. We have interviewed human subjects through remote communication systems. What we have discovered challenges everything we know about survival instincts." He activated the main display screen. Images of Earth animals appeared, each one more frightening than the last to the alien audience. A German shepherd with its mouth open, showing large white teeth. A house cat with its claws extended, caught mid-stretch. Even a small hamster looked terrifying when the image focused on its tiny but sharp teeth. "Observe these creatures," Dr. Talvin said, pointing at the screen with one of his crystal appendages. "Each one is a perfect killing machine. The canine, species which humans call dogs, have powerful jaws capable of crushing bone. They hunt in packs in the wild, bringing down prey much larger than themselves. Yet humans invite them into their homes and allow them near their children." Several delegates made sounds of distress. A mushroom-like being from the fungal networks actually changed color from healthy green to sick yellow. Emma watched this reaction with growing annoyance. These brilliant scientists were looking at family pets and seeing monsters. "The feline species is even more disturbing," Dr. Talvin continued. "These creatures are solitary hunters, designed by evolution to kill silently and efficiently. They have retractable claws, night vision, and reflexes faster than most sentient beings can track. They are, in every sense, perfect assassins, and humans keep them as companions." Professor Yilmoth, a large squid-like creature from the deep ocean worlds, raised several tentacles to speak. "Dr. Talvin, have you considered that these pets might actually be the dominant species? Perhaps the humans are simply well-treated slaves kept alive to serve their animal masters? The suggestion caused an uproar of discussion. Emma gritted her teeth. Down by her feet, she felt warm breath against her ankle as her hidden companion yawned and settled into a more comfortable position for what was clearly going to be a long session of human bashing. An interesting theory, Dr. Talvin replied. However, our observations suggest that humans genuinely believe they are in control of these relationships. They feed the animals, provide shelter, and even clean up their waste. In return, they claim to receive love and companionship. We believe this is a form of Stockholm Syndrome on a species-wide scale. Dr. Veltar, the session's second speaker, approached the podium. His insect-like body clicked and whirred as he moved. Emma had read his research papers and knew he was considered the galaxy's leading expert on interspecies psychology. She also knew his theories about humans were completely wrong. My esteemed colleagues, Dr. Veltar began, I must respectfully disagree with Dr. Talvin's assessment. The situation is far worse than simple Stockholm Syndrome. Humans actively seek out the most dangerous possible pets. They breed these animals to be larger, stronger, and more aggressive. They participate in something called dog shows, where they compete to see who has the most impressive predator. Emma's hidden companion stirred again, this time lifting its head to rest against her leg. She could feel the warm weight and the soft texture of fur, but to everyone else in the room, there was nothing there but empty space. The irony wasn't lost on her. Here she was, sitting in a room full of the galaxy's smartest beings, with one of these deadly predators literally at her side, and not one of them had noticed. We have also discovered that humans engage in activities called pet training, Dr. Veltar continued. At first, we thought this might be some form of control mechanism. Surely if humans were going to keep predators, they would at least try to reduce the danger. But no. This training actually makes the animals more efficient hunters. They teach them to follow commands, to track scents, to attack on signal. The audience was becoming more agitated with each revelation. Emma noticed that several delegates had quietly activated personal protection devices. Others had moved to seats farther from the aisles, as if expecting a pack of rabid dogs to come charging through the doors at any moment. Down at her feet, completely invisible to the panicking academics, one of Earth's most dangerous predators shifted position again and began to quietly groom itself, paying no attention whatsoever to the 47 different alien species that surrounded it. Emma smiled slightly and continued to listen to the galaxy's greatest minds completely misunderstand everything about the relationship between humans and their animal companions. The lunch break ended with delegates returning to their seats, many carrying additional protective equipment they had purchased from the Academy's emergency supply store. Emma noticed that her section of the amphitheater was now conspicuously empty, with other attendees having moved to seats as far from the human observer as possible. She found this both amusing and insulting, especially since the most dangerous predator in the room was currently taking a nap under her chair. Dr. Veltar returned to the podium, his chitinous exoskeleton gleaming under the amphitheater's lights. He carried a stack of data crystals that promised hours of additional testimony. Emma settled in for what she suspected would be an even more frustrating session than the morning's presentation. After reviewing the morning's discussion, Dr. Veltar began, I believe my colleagues have understated the severity of this human problem. We are not simply dealing with poor judgment or species-wide delusion. We are witnessing the systematic breakdown of natural selection among an entire intelligent species. The delegates leaned forward with interest. This was clearly going to be more dramatic than Dr. Talvin's measured academic approach. Consider the facts, Dr. Veltar continued, activating his first holographic display. Humans have taken wild predators and over thousands of years bred them to be even more dangerous. They call this selective breeding. But what they have actually done is create super predators that exist nowhere in nature. The holographic display showed side-by-side images of wolves and various dog breeds. To human eyes, the progression was obvious. Smaller ears, shorter snouts, more varied colors. To the alien audience, it looked like an escalating arms race between humans and increasingly terrifying monsters. "Observe the German Shepherd," Dr. Veltar said, highlighting one particular image. Bred specifically for size, intelligence, and protective aggression. These creatures can weigh up to 45 kilograms of pure muscle and bone. Their bite force exceeds that of most apex predators on their home planet. A delegate from the crystalline clusters actually cracked slightly, producing a sound like breaking glass. Others made various noises of distress or disbelief. But it gets worse, Dr. Veltar continued with what Emma was beginning to recognize as academic showmanship. Humans don't just breed these creatures for size and strength. They breed them for specialized hunting abilities. The bloodhound has a sense of smell thousands of times more sensitive than human noses. The greyhound can run at speeds exceeding 70 kilometers per hour. The border collie has been bred for pack coordination and tactical thinking. Emma's hidden companion stirred at the mention of border collies, perhaps recognizing some genetic kinship. She reached down to scratch behind an ear that officially didn't exist. "And yet," Dr. Veltar's voice rose dramatically, "humans invite these engineered killing machines into their homes. They allow them access to their bedrooms, their kitchens, their children. They take them to public spaces where they could attack innocent bystanders at any moment." Professor Kylejen from the Meridian Cluster raised a tentacled appendage. "Dr. Veltar, surely you're exaggerating. No species could be that reckless and survive to achieve space travel." "Am I exaggerating?" Dr. Veltar replied. "Let me share some statistics from our research. In the human year 2023, there were approximately 90 million dogs kept as pets in North America alone. 90 million predators living alongside humans, fed and sheltered by the very species they could easily overpower and devour. The number caused an uproar. Several delegates immediately began calculating whether their own species could survive such an invasion of dangerous animals. The result was clearly negative, based on the sounds of panic beginning to echo through the amphitheater. Furthermore, Dr. Veltar continued once order was restored, humans engage in activities they call dog parks. These are designated areas where they deliberately gather large numbers of these predators together, remove their restraining devices, and allow them to interact freely. They claim this is for exercise and socialization, but any rational being can see it's a recipe for disaster. Emma had been to many dog parks. She remembered sunny afternoons watching Rex play with other dogs, their owners chatting and laughing, while the animals chased each other around in what was clearly play behavior, not preparation for mass slaughter. But explaining that to this audience seemed impossible. "The feline situation is equally disturbing," Dr. Veltar continued, switching to a new set of images. "Humans keep approximately 94 million cats as pets. These are solitary hunters, evolved for stealth and sudden violence. Unlike the pack-hunting canines, cats are assassins. They strike without warning, kill efficiently, and show no mercy to their prey." The new images showed house cats in various poses, sleeping curled in sunny spots, playing with toy mice, sitting in cardboard boxes. But Dr. Veltar's commentary made each innocent image sound like documentation of a horror movie. "Notice the retracted claws in this specimen," he said, pointing to a picture of a tabby cat stretching. "Those claws are as sharp as surgical instruments. They can extend instantly and without warning. The musculature in the hind legs allows for explosive leaping attacks. The flexible spine enables them to twist in mid-air and land in perfect striking position." Emma looked down at her feet, where she knew a set of equally impressive muscles and reflexes were currently deployed for the important task of staying comfortable during a long nap. The difference between Dr. Veltar's fearsome predator and her sleeping companion was simply a matter of context and relationship. But perhaps most disturbing of all, Dr. Veltar said, his voice dropping to an ominous whisper, is the human practice of allowing these predators to roam freely outside their homes. Cats, in particular, are often permitted to wander their neighborhoods unsupervised. They claim this provides natural behavior and mental stimulation. What it actually provides is an army of trained killers with intimate knowledge of local territory and access to potential victims. The audience was now in full panic mode. Several delegates had activated emergency communications to their home worlds. Others were clearly preparing to leave the symposium early. Emma wondered if there would be anyone left for the afternoon session. My recommendation, Dr. Veltar concluded, is immediate quarantine protocols for any human colonies or settlements. Until they can demonstrate the ability to control or eliminate these dangerous animal populations, they should be considered a threat to galactic security. We cannot allow humans to spread these predator relationships to other worlds. The preliminary vote was 46 in favor of quarantine protocols, 0 opposed, with 1 abstention from the human observer who had no official voting rights anyway. Emma sat quietly in her increasingly empty section of the amphitheater, one hand resting on what appeared to be empty air, but was actually the warm, soft head of a sleeping dog who had spent the entire morning being described as a galactic security threat. She was beginning to think the afternoon session might be very interesting indeed. The afternoon session began with all the enthusiasm of a funeral march. Most delegates had returned, but many now wore personal protection devices that hummed softly or glowed with various energy fields. Some had positioned guard drones around their seats. Others had moved to the amphitheater's upper levels, apparently believing that height would provide safety from any rampaging Earth animals that might suddenly appear. Dr. Talvin approached the podium with obvious excitement. Behind him, technicians were setting up equipment that Emma didn't recognize. Large projectors, sensor arrays, and what looked like a small computer powerful enough to run a starship's navigation system. Fellow scholars, Dr. Talvin announced, this afternoon we will move beyond theory to practical demonstration. Using the most advanced holographic technology available, we will show you exactly why human pets represent such a clear and present danger to galactic civilization. Emma felt her hidden companion shift position and lift its head. Something in Dr. Talvin's tone had apparently caught its attention. She reached down to provide a reassuring pat, hoping to keep the situation calm. Our holographic system has been programmed with detailed behavioral models of over 200 Earth animal species, Dr. Talvin continued. These models are based on extensive field research, video analysis, and interviews with human subjects. What you are about to see represents the most accurate possible recreation of these dangerous creatures. The amphitheater's lights dimmed. Around the room, personal protection devices brightened in response. Emma noticed that several delegates had moved even further back, while others had activated what looked like escape pod beacons. The first hologram materialized in the center of the amphitheater. It was a large German shepherd, perfectly rendered down to individual hairs and the shine of its eyes. But something was wrong with the programming. The dog's mouth was open and panting, which was normal behavior for a happy, relaxed animal. However, the holographic system's behavioral analysis interpreted this as an aggressive display. Observe. The predatory stance, Dr. Talvin narrated, seemingly unaware that several delegates were now climbing over seats to reach emergency exits. Notice how the creature displays its weaponry. Those teeth are designed to crush bone and tear flesh. The forward-leaning posture indicates preparation for an attack. Emma stared at the hologram in disbelief. The dog was wagging its tail, the universal canine signal for friendliness and excitement. But the holographic system had somehow missed this crucial detail, instead focusing on the open mouth and forward-facing body position. The real chaos began when the technicians activated the interactive mode. The holographic dog suddenly bounded toward the front row of seats, tail wagging. enthusiastically, tongue hanging out in an expression of pure joy. To human eyes, it looked like a friendly pet wanting to play. To the alien delegates, it looked like a charging monster with bared fangs. The Centaurian representative screamed and activated an emergency distress beacon. His 4 legs kicked frantically as he tried to climb over the back of his specially designed seat. The signal immediately brought security forces running, their own weapons drawn and ready for combat. "Fascinating," Dr. Veltar commented, apparently the only delegate not in full panic mode. "Notice how the creature's hunting. Instincts immediately focused on the weakest-looking prey. The Centaurians are known for their nervous dispositions." Meanwhile, a second hologram had activated. A large tabby cat appeared on one of the desks, arching its back in what humans would recognize as a typical stretch. The holographic system, however, interpreted this as a threat display. The cat's purr, amplified through the sound system, came out as a deep, rumbling growl that shook the amphitheater's walls. More emergency beacons activated. The fungal network delegates released spores in what Emma assumed was their version of fainting. The Aquatic Union representatives were frantically splashing in their water-filled seats, trying to dive to safety. "Remarkable aggressive posturing," Dr. Talvin shouted over the chaos, still apparently unaware that his demonstration had turned into a disaster. "The feline's raised fur pattern is designed to make it appear larger and more threatening. The vocalization is clearly intended to intimidate prey before the killing strike." Emma realized that someone needed to take control of the situation before it got completely out of hand. She stood up, and as she did, she felt her hidden companion rise as well, moving to stand beside her leg, still invisible to the panicking academics, but definitely present. "Excuse me," she called out, her voice carrying clearly over the chaos. "May I make an observation?" Dr. Talvin, still focused on his malfunctioning demonstration, gestured for her to continue. "Captain Ross, perhaps you can explain why your species willingly subjects itself to this kind of terror on a daily basis?" Emma walked slowly toward the center of the amphitheater, something invisible pacing calmly beside her. The security forces, now surrounding the room with weapons drawn, watched her approach with nervous confusion. Why was the human walking directly toward the holographic predators that had sent everyone else into panic? "I think," Emma said loudly enough for everyone to hear, "there's been a fundamental misunderstanding about what you're actually looking at." She stopped directly in front of the holographic German shepherd, which was still bouncing around in what was clearly playful excitement. The real dog beside her, still invisible, tilted its head as if curious about this strange duplicate. "This animal isn't displaying aggression," Emma explained. "It's displaying happiness. The open mouth isn't a threat display. It's panting, which is how dogs cool themselves and show relaxation. The forward posture isn't preparation for attack. It's an invitation to play." Several delegates had stopped their panicked fleeing to listen, though they maintained what they clearly considered safe distances. "And this cat," Emma continued, approaching the holographic tabby, "isn't making a threat display. It's stretching, probably after a nap. The sound you're hearing isn't a growl, it's purring, which cats do when they're content and relaxed." Dr. Veltar, still taking notes despite the chaos, looked up from his data pad. "But Captain Ross, our behavioral analysis clearly indicates hostile intent. The body language, the vocalizations, the positioning, everything suggests imminent violence." Emma smiled and reached out to pet what appeared to be empty air beside her. Her hand clearly made contact with something soft and warm, something that responded to her touch by moving closer and making a sound that the translator systems rendered as a happy sigh. "Your analysis is missing the most important factor," she said. "Context and relationship, and the fact that I've brought along a real example to show you the difference between your theories and reality." She knelt down, and suddenly every eye in the room focused on her as she clearly petted and scratched behind the ears of something that wasn't there, until her companion decided that hiding was no longer necessary and began to shimmer into visibility. The second wave of panic that swept through the amphitheater made the first one look like mild concern. The amphitheater fell into a silence so complete that Emma could hear the soft whir of air recycling systems and the distant hum of the Academy's main computers. Every delegate, every security officer, every technician was staring at the medium-sized dog that had just materialized beside her. He was brown and white, with intelligent dark eyes and ears that stood partially upright. His tail wagged gently as he looked around the room with what appeared to be mild curiosity about all the strange beings surrounding him. "This is Rex," Emma said simply, her hand resting on his head. "He's been here the entire time." The silence lasted exactly 3 seconds. Then chaos erupted on a scale that made the holographic demonstration look like a quiet library discussion. Security alarms began wailing throughout the Academy. Emergency lights bathed the amphitheater in flashing red. The Altarian delegates' crystal structures began resonating at frequencies that created an eerie harmony with the alarm system. Several of the fungal network representatives actually changed color from healthy green to warning orange. "Containment breach," someone shouted over the communications system. "Dangerous predator loose in Amphitheater 7. All units respond." Emma watched in amazement as 46 of the galaxy's most intelligent species completely lost their minds over a 3-year-old border collie mix who was currently more interested in the interesting smells of different alien species than in causing any harm. Dr. Talvin had pressed himself against the back wall, his crystalline structure flickering through colors Emma didn't think existed. "How long has that creature been here?" he managed to ask. "About 6 hours," Emma replied calmly. "He came with me this morning. He's been under my seat most of the time, sleeping." "Sleeping?" Dr. Veltar's insectoid voice reached a pitch that hurt Emma's ears. "A predator doesn't sleep in the presence of prey. It was obviously waiting for the perfect moment to attack." Rex, hearing his name mentioned in conversation, looked up at Emma with the expression every dog owner recognizes. The look that says, "Are we talking about something interesting? Should I be paying attention? Is there possibly food involved?" Emma scratched behind his ears, producing a sound of contentment that made several delegates flinch. "Rex, sit." The fursome dog immediately sat, demonstrating perfect obedience training. His tail continued wagging as he looked expectantly at Emma, clearly waiting for the next command or possibly a treat. "Good boy," Emma said, and Rex's whole body wiggled with happiness at the praise. Professor Yilmoth, who had been hiding behind his water-filled seat, slowly emerged. "The creature follows commands. It responds to verbal instructions." "Of course he does," Emma said. "Rex has been trained since he was a puppy. He knows about 50 different commands, can find lost objects by scent, and has never bitten anyone in his entire life." Security forces were now surrounding the amphitheater, wearing full combat armor and carrying weapons Emma didn't recognize. Their leader, a tall reptilian being with official academy markings, approached cautiously. "Captain Ross," the security chief said, his voice distorted by his helmet's communication system, "please step away from the dangerous animal. We have containment equipment en route." "He's not dangerous," Emma replied. "Watch this. Rex, lie down." Rex immediately lay down, resting his head on his paws but keeping his eyes alert and interested in everything happening around him. The sight of a supposedly deadly predator calmly following orders seemed to confuse the security forces even more than the chaos had. "Stay," Emma commanded, then walked several meters away. Rex remained perfectly still, though his eyes followed her movement. "Rex, come." The dog immediately rose and trotted to her side, sitting again without being asked. Throughout this demonstration, 46 alien species watched in fascination and terror as one of Earth's most dangerous predators displayed behavior that contradicted everything they thought they knew. Dr. Veltar began taking frantic notes. "The creature demonstrates advanced cognitive abilities. It processes complex verbal commands and responds appropriately. This suggests intelligence levels we hadn't previously documented. You hadn't documented it because you never actually studied the relationship, Emma pointed out. You studied wild animals and combat situations. You never looked at domesticated animals in their normal family environment. Rex, apparently deciding that all this standing around was boring, wandered over to the nearest delegate who was still in the amphitheater. It happened to be Professor Keeljen from the Meridian Cluster, who froze in terror as the dog approached. "What's it doing?" Professor Keeljen whispered, his tentacles trembling. Rex sat down in front of the alien professor and looked up at him with an expression Emma recognized immediately, the hopeful look that said, "You seem nice? Would you like to be friends? Do you have treats? Can I sniff you to learn more about where you come from?" "He wants to meet you," Emma explained. "Dogs are social animals. They're curious about new people. Or in this case, new beings. He's not threatening you. He's trying to make friends." Professor Keeljen stared down at Rex for a long moment. "It's smaller than I expected, and the eyes aren't as aggressive as the images suggested." "That's because those images were taken out of context," Emma said. "Probably pictures of working dogs or dogs in stressful situations. Rex is relaxed and happy. This is what a normal pet dog actually looks like." One of Professor Keeljen's tentacles slowly descended toward Rex's head. The dog remained perfectly still, allowing the alien contact. When the tentacle touched his fur, Rex's tail began wagging faster. "The texture is pleasant," Professor Keeljen said in wonder. "And warm. It's making a vibrating sound. Is that dangerous?" "He's not making sounds," Emma laughed. "That's his tail hitting the floor. It means he's happy." Other delegates began to edge closer, scientific curiosity starting to overcome their fear. Rex, for his part, seemed delighted by all the attention. He'd never met so many different kinds of beings before, and his natural friendliness was beginning to win over even the most nervous observers. Dr. Talvin, still pressed against the wall but now taking detailed readings with various instruments, called out, "The creature's biorhythms indicate no stress or aggressive preparation. Heart rate is normal. Brain activity shows patterns consistent with relaxation and curiosity, not hunting behavior." "Because he's not hunting," Emma said patiently. "He's socializing. This is what dogs do when they meet new friends. They're pack animals. They want to be part of the group." Rex had now made contact with delegates from 6 different species, his tail wagging constantly as he collected new scents and received cautious pets from beings unlike anything in his previous experience. Not once had he shown aggression, fear, or any behavior that could be interpreted as threatening. Emma looked around the amphitheater at the assembled academics and security forces. "So where exactly is this deadly predator you've all been so worried about?" 2 hours later, the emergency protocols had been canceled and most of the security forces had returned to their normal duties. The amphitheater looked almost normal again, except for the small crowd of alien scientists gathered around Rex, who was clearly enjoying being the center of attention more than any dog in galactic history. Emma sat on the steps near the podium, watching as some of the galaxy's most brilliant minds tried to understand how their careful research could have been so completely wrong. Rex was currently allowing Professor Yilmoth to examine his paws, while Dr. Veltar took detailed scans of his bone structure and muscle development. "The anatomical analysis is correct," Dr. Veltar admitted, his voice carrying a note of confusion. "This creature does possess all the physical capabilities we identified. The jaw strength, the muscle development, the sensory abilities, they're all there. But the behavioral patterns are completely different from our models." Dr. Talvin approached. Emma, his crystal structure now showing a steady blue color that she had learned indicated curiosity rather than fear. "Captain Ross, how do we explain this discrepancy? Our research was based on solid scientific methodology." Emma scratched Rex behind the ears as she considered her answer. He leaned into her touch, producing the soft sounds of contentment that had initially terrified the delegates, but now seemed to fascinate them. "Your methodology was fine," she said finally, "but your starting assumptions were wrong. You assumed that having the ability to cause harm means wanting to cause harm. You studied predator behavior without considering the possibility that predators might choose not to be predators." Professor Kilgin, who had been the first to actually touch Rex, was now sitting on the floor beside the dog, gently stroking his fur while Rex's tail created a steady rhythm against the amphitheater's polished surface. "The social bonding behavior is remarkable," Professor Kilgin observed. "He's adapted his responses to accommodate completely alien body language and communication styles. When I first approached, he immediately adjusted his posture to appear less threatening. He somehow recognized my fear and responded by making himself seem smaller and more approachable." Emma nodded. "Dogs are experts at reading social situations. Rex can tell the difference between someone who's afraid, someone who's angry, someone who's sad, or someone who just wants to play. He responds differently to each situation." Dr. Veltar looked up from his scans. "But this level of social intelligence suggests cognitive abilities far beyond what we attributed to non-sentient species. If these animals can read emotional states across species barriers, process complex social situations, and modify their behavior accordingly, perhaps we need to reconsider their classification. They're not sentient the way we are," Emma explained. "But they're not simple killing machines either. They're somewhere in between. Smart enough to form complex relationships, emotional enough to care about their human families, but still animals with animal instincts and needs." Rex had apparently decided that Professor Kilgen was his new best friend. He rolled onto his back, presenting his belly for scratching in the universal dog gesture of complete trust. Professor Kilgen obliged with several tentacles, producing sounds of happiness from Rex that made the alien scientist's own appendages flutter with what Emma assumed was pleasure. "He trusts completely," Professor Kilgen marveled. "He's placed himself in a vulnerable position and relies entirely on my good intentions. The level of faith required for such behavior is extraordinary." Emma smiled. "That's what partnership means. Rex trusts that I'll feed him, care for him, keep him safe, and treat him well. In return, he offers loyalty, companionship, and protection if I need it. It's not domination or mind control. It's a voluntary agreement between species." Dr. Talvin was reviewing his notes, his crystal appendages moving rapidly across his data pad. "Our entire theoretical framework was based on the assumption that interspecies relationships must be parasitic or predatory. We never considered the possibility of genuine cooperation. Maybe that says more about galactic civilization than it does about humans," Emma suggested quietly. The comment created an uncomfortable silence as the assembled academics considered the implications. Finally, Dr. Veltar spoke up. "You're suggesting that our fear of these human pets reflects our own inability to form trusting relationships with other species?" Emma shrugged. "I'm just saying that humans have been successfully cooperating with other Earth species for thousands of years. We have partnerships with dogs, cats, horses, even birds. We've learned that being different doesn't mean being enemies." Rex chose that moment to demonstrate her point by approaching Dr. Talvin, who had remained the most nervous of the delegates. Instead of his usual enthusiastic greeting, Rex seemed to sense the Altarian's continued anxiety. He sat down at a respectful distance and simply waited, making no sudden movements, his posture relaxed and non-threatening. Dr. Talvin stared at the dog for several long moments. Rex remained perfectly still, his eyes calm and patient, waiting for the alien scientist to make the first move. Finally, Dr. Talvin extended one crystal appendage toward Rex's head. "He's waiting for permission," Dr. Talvin observed with wonder. "He recognizes my hesitation and won't approach until I indicate it's acceptable." Rex allowed the careful touch, his tail giving a gentle wag when Dr. Talvin's crystal finger made contact with his fur. The Altarian scientist's structure began glowing with a soft, warm light that Emma had learned indicated deep fascination. "The emotional intelligence is remarkable," Dr. Talvin murmured. He assessed my comfort level and adjusted his behavior accordingly. "This isn't simple training. This is genuine empathy." Emma watched as more delegates gathered around Rex, each one discovering that their fears had been based on incomplete information. The dog seemed to understand that he was representing his entire species and possibly all Earth animals because he was on his absolute best behavior. "What about the statistics?" asked Professor Yilmoth. "The 90 million dogs in North America, surely some of them must cause problems." "Of course some do," Emma admitted. "Just like some humans cause problems. But the vast majority live peacefully, with their families their entire lives. Dog attacks make news precisely because they're unusual. Millions of positive interactions happen every day, and nobody reports them because they're normal." Dr. Veltar was still taking readings and notes. "The stress hormones in both the human and the animal are at baseline levels. This isn't a suppressed predator waiting to strike. This is a genuinely relaxed, content creature." Rex had found a comfortable spot on the amphitheater floor where he could be petted by multiple delegates simultaneously. His expression was one of pure bliss as tentacles, appendages, and various alien body parts provided attention from beings he'd never imagined could exist. "I think," Emma said slowly, "this demonstrates something important about cooperation between different species. Rex doesn't care that you're all completely different from anything he's ever seen before. He judges you by your actions, not your appearance. You've been kind to him, so he likes you." Professor Kylejen looked up from where he was now scratching Rex's belly. "Perhaps the real question isn't why humans keep these animals, but why the rest of us are so afraid of forming relationships with other species." The comment hung in the air as the delegates considered its implications. Around the galaxy, most species lived in careful isolation, interacting only through formal diplomatic channels and heavily regulated trade agreements. The idea of genuine friendship across species lines was almost unthinkable. Dr. Talven's crystal structure was now glowing with the steady rhythm that indicated deep thought. "Captain Ross, what would happen if Rex encountered a species that was genuinely threatening? Would he defend you?" "Probably," Emma said, "but he'd prefer to avoid conflict if possible. Dogs are good at reading situations. Rex would try to get me away from danger before resorting to fighting." As if to demonstrate her point, Rex suddenly lifted his head and looked toward the amphitheater's main entrance. A moment later, Academy security entered, their equipment still active from the earlier emergency. Rex immediately moved to position himself between Emma and the armed officers, but his posture was alert rather than aggressive. "He's protective, but not hostile," Emma explained. "He's ready to act if necessary, but he's not looking for a fight." The security chief approached cautiously. "Captain Ross, we need to discuss protocols for your companion's presence at future academic events." Emma looked around the amphitheater at the assembled delegates, many of whom were now actively playing with Rex or taking detailed notes about his behavior. "I think," she said with a smile, "that might not be a problem anymore." Dr. Veltar stood up, his insectoid frame clicking as he moved. "I motion to formally revise our assessment of human-animal relationships. The evidence clearly indicates that these partnerships represent successful interspecies cooperation, not dangerous delusions." "Seconded," called Professor Yilmoth. "Thirded," added Dr. Talvin. The vote was unanimous this time. 47 in favor, 0 opposed, with one enthusiastic tail wag from the unofficial canine delegate who had somehow managed to completely change galactic policy on human colonization rights simply by being himself. As the session officially ended, Emma watched delegates from across the galaxy say goodbye to Rex, many of them promising to visit Earth to see these remarkable partnerships for themselves. Rex accepted each farewell with the dignity of a natural diplomat, as if he understood that he had just become the first Earth animal to serve as an ambassador to the galaxy. Walking out of the amphitheater with Rex trotting happily beside her, Emma couldn't help but smile. The galaxy's smartest minds had spent months studying the theoretical dangers of human pets. It had taken one real dog, simply being a dog, to show them that sometimes the greatest wisdom comes not from fearing differences, but from embracing the possibilities that arise when different species choose to trust each other. Rex looked up at her with his tongue hanging out in a doggy grin, completely unaware that he had just made history. To him, it had simply been a day full of new friends, interesting smells, and lots of attention, which Emma reflected was probably the perfect summary of successful interspecies cooperation.